Cody.
Hey, boss, how's it going?
Hey, good man. How are you?
Doing well.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for making the time, man. I'm really excited to learn from you and dig into things. And yeah, we have 5 or 6 people sort of in the wait list here, but
Cool.
we're recording. Obviously, if you're okay with that, I want to
Yeah,
make sure.
definitely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so super informal here. So I guess what I'd love to do, Cody, is just kind of very quickly introduce you and then just let you run with it, right?
Cool.
Not spend too much time getting into the intro, just like spend as much time on co-advise as we possibly can.
Sweet. That sounds great.
Great. All right, I'll start admitting people and we can go from there. All right, welcome everyone. Michael, Jeannie, Ethan, how y'all doing? Alessandro?
I see you.
Good to see you
Nice to
guys.
see you. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'm excited to have Cody here today. I got to know Cody a little over a year ago, I would say, just through Lattice,
Mhm.
and we spent some time in New York, and he was with Bloomberg Beta before, but we're obviously here to talk about co-advise. So Cody, as I said, not too much of an intro from my end, want to dig right into you and the company you're working for. So I'll pass the baton if that is all right, and spend the time learning from you here.
Awesome. That sounds great. Appreciate you you inviting me to chat, and great to meet everyone. I'm Cody. I recently joined Coinvise as the head of partnerships and business development. Although we're still a small and lean team, so I would say I'm aware of many different hats at this point. Prior to joining Coinvise, as Boss mentioned, I was most recently at Bloomberg Beta, which is a seed stage venture fund that's focused on the future of work. At Bloomberg Beta, I was really leaning into the intersection of Web3 and the future of work. And that's what really sent me deep down the rabbit hole around DAOs and tokens, as well as the infrastructure that's powering, token economies and tokenized communities. And that led me to Coinvise. And before I was at Bloomberg Beta, I spent a few years at DE Shaw, which is a large multi-strategy fund where I was doing primary research and alternative data strategy. And before that, I helped build out a strategy consulting team at a company called Alpha Sites. And it was back when I was at Alpha Sites when I probably first came across crypto in 2017, but it was always much more of like a nights and weekends type hobby. Was very fascinated by what was happening in the space and the opportunity, but not until about a year and a half ago when I was at Bloomberg Beta that I really started to lean into the space and kind of operate around it in a day-to-day capacity, first from investing and now obviously from an operator standpoint at Coinvise. And excited to share a bit more about what we're building and kind of like the overarching space that we're building in and some of the opportunities that exist there. So Coinvise at a high level builds really powerful no-code tools that give creators superpowers to launch and manage tokenized communities. And kind of like the first interaction that many folks have with Coinvise is minting their token. For folks who are looking to mint a token, it's generally a pretty complex process. There's a lot of smart contracts that go into that. And unless you are a developer with either Solidity experience, or you have other, I guess, experience with working with smart contracts, whatever, whether you're working with Ethereum, Polygon, or different types of chains, like it's hard to do. So we first set out to like abstract the difficulty away from that by building a really easy no-code platform to mint a token, where anybody can plug in and mint their token in less than 2 minutes. All you need to do is connect your MetaMask wallet or your Coinbase wallet, whatever wallet that you want to use, fill out the parameters around your token, the name of the token, the symbol, the amount of tokens that you want to mint, and the wallet address that you want that treasury to go to. And then all of our smart contracts on the back end abstract away the actual minting of those tokens. And that's kind of like the first thing that we do. So we enable folks to get their token into the world. And then the second layer is a suite of tools to actually manage that token and the distribution and utility of that token over time. And we do that primarily through 3 different tools. which we call airdrops, quests, and vesting. And I'll start with vests because I think they're probably the most analogous to what happens with early stage companies. So like with most startups, there's equity involved, and as new folks come into a team, there's usually a vesting period around that equity. Generally, there might be like a 1-year cliff period before your startup equity starts to unlock, and then there's a linear vesting period over, let's say, like 2 or 3 years, where every month a little bit of your equity unlocks. Same happens on the investor side as well. That's obviously over a longer time horizon, but investors have lockups for their equity when they're investing in a company. We've kind of built a one-to-one for that for tokens, where you have the ability to program token vesting into your tokenized community as well. So if you have early contributors or investors that are part of your project, your community, you can set the parameters around when their tokens actually unlock and when they can start to utilize them. So again, you might have like a 6-month cliff, and then those tokens will linearly vest over a 2-year period, 3-year period. You can program that. And then beyond vesting, the next feature that many folks interact with are airdrops. And this is a really like unique way that you're able to send tokens to wallets in bulk, right? So like, let's say you are a creator and you have a community that you just launched your token for, and maybe you have like 500 folks within the community that you want to get tokens into their wallet. Actually sending tokens to all of those wallets in a manual capacity is rather difficult and time consuming. So we built an airdrops product that just makes it super simple to upload all of those wallets like through a CSV, or you can copy and paste them and send them all an airdrop of tokens at one time. And you can do that repeatedly as well. So like if you want to set up a weekly airdrop or a monthly airdrop, you give it more or less like infinite approval authority to set those up, and you don't need to recreate the airdrop every single time. And there's also the ability to create what we call customized claim pages, where rather than sending tokens directly to somebody's wallet, you can set up a claim page, a URL that's branded with your community's branding, image, et cetera, that folks can plug into and claim tokens from directly. And what's really interesting about that is that you can set eligibility criteria around who's able to actually claim those tokens. So let's say you're partnering with another community that has tokens as well. You can set eligibility criteria that whoever goes to this link, connects their wallet, they also need to hold X, Y, and Z tokens in order to claim this airdrop. Or maybe they need to have an NFT in their wallet to be eligible to claim those tokens as well. You can set that as a parameter. So you can get very customizable about who's actually able to claim those tokens. And it kind of creates like a multiplayer effect where you can do airdrops with other communities or only reward certain contributors based on whatever parameters you want to put in place. So that's airdrops, which is just like a really easy mechanism to send tokens in bulk. And then we also have this feature called quests as well, which in traditional terms is more analogous to like bounties or rewards, where you're able to kind of like automatically send tokens to folks within a community who are completing an atomic task. I think an easy example here is, let's say that you have a community and you want to reward folks for completing a task like creating a new logo or maybe creating some marketing copy. You would put together a quest, which is also a website, send that out in your Discord or your group chat or Twitter or wherever. And anyone who wants to apply for that quest will be able to click into that link, see the parameters, details around like what the atomic task is. They will apply, upload their proof of work, for lack of a better term, which might be like a Figma page if it's a logo design, or maybe a Google Doc with marketing copy. And then the community lead who posted that quest will then get a notification that so-and-so applied, can review whatever it is that they submitted, click accept, and that automatically facilitates a transaction where whoever's quest got approved can then claim those tokens. So there's no manual need to actually send someone tokens, like get their wallet address, all of that is abstracted away, and we more or less automate the process of rewards or contributions. So that's kind of like the high level of the tools that Coinvise has built to date. Happy to like dive into some of the use cases or communities that we've worked with to date, and like, I guess the broader kind of opportunity around tokenized communities next, if that seems like an interesting direction, Floss.
Yeah, Cody, for sure. And everyone obviously jump in with any questions. But yeah, Cody, I think the trouble I've had in the past is like finding the right analogy and like having concrete examples to kind of tie it to, right? And I think a lot of the hype in the last couple of years is just like minting an NFT to mint an NFT, right? Like there's a lot of like excitement around it and you can make a lot of money, blah, 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 blah. But like really like bring it home for us. And, you know, whether it's an example that you're comfortable sharing or what you've seen and been a part of, whatever feels appropriate. But just like make these ideas really concrete for us in ways that have been exciting for you.
Yeah, I think an interesting place to start may be around NFTs, which is something that we're working on, and we'll be releasing like a memberships NFT feature next month. And there was a really fascinating article that came out, I think it was yesterday, from Packy McCormick. For those of you who read Not Boring, he did an article with Alex Danko from Shopify about kind of like the future of token gated commerce. And I think that's like a really, I guess, not simple, but like practical example of what NFTs can be used for in like more of a broad approach to commerce beyond just Web3. And NFTs kind of serve as that like mass consumer unlock to bring folks in the space. And I would definitely recommend going and reading that piece. It's called Tokenized Commerce or Token Gated Commerce. But like how we will be using NFT memberships, and I think like to kind of drive home the utility behind them, is NFTs can be used as a crowdfunding mechanism and a way to raise in a non-dilutive capacity, right? So like traditionally, if you're looking to get a company off the ground, you're either going to take equity from investors and that's going to be dilutive. Or if you're working more in like a small business capacity, you're probably going to look at like a debt approach. Whereas NFTs enable crowdfunding in more of a community method, right? And you can more or less say like, if you purchase this NFT, which then I will use as funds to build my business, I will then give you benefits and perks and a whole host of different like access in tandem for giving me those funds. And that funding is entirely non-dilutive. And then folks who own those NFTs, have the ability to be early supporters of a new product, a new brand, a new business, et cetera. But they'll also potentially be able to share in the upside success of that community or business, et cetera, through holding that NFT. And that can be done in a couple of different ways. Just by holding that NFT, if whatever brand or whatever's associated with it becomes more valuable, that NFT itself and holding that NFT is likely to become more valuable over time. And there's liquidity around those NFTs. You can sell them on the secondary market. But also, what NFTs enable is like the ability to program revenue splits into those NFTs. So maybe for somebody who's launching their business, they set up NFTs in tiers. Think about it like a bronze, a silver, and a gold. Maybe that's crowdfunding like $500, $750, and $1,000. And if you offer $1,000, or those are pretty close in range. So maybe it's like $10,000 for the gold tier. You could actually say like, if you give me $10,000 and purchase this gold tier NFT, you will be entitled to 1% of all revenue sales from this NFT and 1% of all secondary sales of this NFT in perpetuity. So you're actually building in mechanisms to more or less share the upside success of your business with folks who hold those NFTs. And again, you're not doing it in a dilutive capacity through equity. And through what we're specifically doing with NFT memberships, there's also a way to create, I guess you would consider it like on-chain recurring revenue, where you can set time-bound NFTs. And you can think about that, like that's more or less analogous to like a paywall, but in a Web3 native way, where let's say you have a seasonal NFT that will give you access to exclusive content. Maybe like if you're thinking about, maybe it's like an IRL like coffee shop or something, and you can buy a seasonal pass, seasonal NFT where you get free coffee or whatever it may be, whatever benefit comes with that over the course of 3 months or 30 days. You can set whatever time it is. And then at the end of that period of time, that NFT will be rendered worthless and folks will need to renew their NFT. So that's more or less like the one-to-one with traditional paywalls or gating of commerce that's now being transitioned to NFTs. So I think there's a lot of really interesting unlocks that those enables, and we're excited to build on that front where folks are going to be very easily able to plug into Coinvise and build membership tiers around NFTs and token gate content. And this will probably be most useful for creators at the outset that maybe it's a musician and they want to share unlisted tracks or do AMAs with their audience. Like that's a perk or a benefit that you can only offer to token holders. And it will be fascinating to see how folks incorporate that, but also leverage NFTs as a funding mechanism that hasn't really existed before or is much more difficult, I guess, in more of like a Web 2 way.
Yeah, the time-bound NFT, it's really interesting. I haven't heard too many people talk about that, but the use cases there seem really powerful. And just to piggyback on what you're saying, Cody, the article yesterday with Alex was really interesting. And specifically, I think the example they gave is if you hold this DeFi NFT, it'll automatically give X% to this organization that you're a part of or something, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like a individualized, but on a mass scale, right? And it's really interesting to think of kind of the repercussions there.
Right.
Yeah. So we talk about vests, we talk about quests, and we talk about airdrops. Any other examples in the in those buckets to help us bring it to life?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of quests, a fascinating area that we've started to think about are like the ability to leverage quests in more of a service DAO model. And service DAOs, to kind of like take a little bit of a step back, are emerging in a few different areas around like the replacement of traditional creative agencies, whether those are marketing agencies, designers, as well as like advertising. And folks are coming to these new emerging DAOs or these groups where they're all bound together by like the collective success of the token that is launching around that service DAO. And that can be used as payment and to facilitate transactions within kind of like its own economy and can be used with external clients as well. And like where quests get interesting with clients, like let's say that you have an advertising DAO and there's different folks who are part of the DAO and the DAO is working with Nike, let's say as an example of a client. Nike will come to the DAO and say like, we're looking for X, Y, and Z. And then that is posted within the confines of the service DAO, where there may be a bunch of freelance marketers or advertising executives that then have the opportunity to bid on that proposal. And that will ultimately be paid, Nike can pay that in dollars or maybe within the native token of the DAO as well. But folks who hold that native token for the DAO may need to put up like a bid in order to do that proposal. And that actually like kind of creates some skin in the game where like they have to stake their reputation in order to take that work. And not anyone can just say like, oh, I'm going to raise my hand to work with Nike and give them subpar work and still get rewarded for it. Like you can actually stake the token as like putting your reputation on the line and the ability to say that like, my work is quality enough and like, I'm going to put my word behind this. But with quests, you can then, Nike can put together that quest of saying like, we need someone to do X, Y, and Z. And then that would be attributed to like a specific project. And that can link to a specific database where all of Nike's projects are held. And then every time someone uploads and completes that work, Nike is then able to kind of review that on a project by project basis and either accept or offer feedback and say, like, this doesn't look up to par. We're not going to reward you tokens for completing this. And more or less like have a very easy mechanism for rewarding folks who are completing those quests through that token of the DAO, or maybe like at some point Nike has their own token as well, and they're facilitating payment through that. But then I think like more interesting as well is that you can then start to get data and analytics around like what type of quests are being completed, who within the DAO is actually doing the best work, what type of clients they're having the most success with. And you can start to like kind of extrapolate further there the different types of data that you can pull from that, which I think is going to be really fascinating. So that's an area that like there hasn't been a lot of use cases to date, but I think as more service DAOs emerge, we'll see more of that. Like an early example for folks, if they haven't, it might be worth checking out Brain Trust, which is kind of building like a decentralized freelance market. And there's a lot of big brands that are already operating on there today.
How is that data accumulated? Yeah, just talk to us about that. I hadn't heard this angle on it before.
Yeah, so I think in terms of like how that data will be accumulated, that will probably not be too different than in a, like it will more or less operate in like a Web 2 capacity, although you can layer in the ability to segment that data by wallet addresses and around like someone's Web3 identity. So by completing your work and submitting your work that's tied to your wallet, that reputation is then portable beyond just the DAO that you're working with. Like that follows you across Web3 and like the connected web more broadly. So like that kind of serves, and this kind of gets into another separate but tangential thread around like on-chain credentialing and kind of like what I think will be the future of what like resumes look like, where the work that you're actually doing that's associated with your wallet will be visible to anybody who plugs in. And you know, there's a handful of folks that are building credentialing systems where like if someone completes a quest, that is then tied to their wallet, and anywhere else they go, anyone who wants to kind of check and see what that person has done has a very easy way to actually see their proof of work, and they don't need to rely on what they list on their resume. And I'd say at the outset that that's probably more applicable for like development work, because it's much easier to track like what a developer is doing on GitHub or different repositories they worked on. But it's going to probably expand to creative work, as well as probably, you know, over the next couple of years or so. I don't think this will happen overnight, to many fields of work where, you know, what you're doing will actually be verifiable on chain, and you can use that to build your portfolio of work.
Yeah, it's really cool. Do you guys take a stance on any protocol or anything like that? Or are you guys looking more to become like a platform where anyone and everything can integrate, and it's more up to the user, like whatever you know, trade-offs they want to make with the different protocols?
Yeah, from a protocol standpoint, like we're live today on Ethereum mainnet as well as Polygon. I think the reason to start on mainnet was just because that's where the most activity around decentralized communities exists today. And then with Polygon has become a really fantastic scaling solution, and hosting transactions on the Matic network, which is Polygon's network, is significantly cheaper than doing so on Ethereum mainnet. And there's a lot less gas fees associated with doing bulk transactions. But the nice thing and the interplay between Ethereum and Polygon is that it's easy to bridge between the two, and you don't necessarily need a separate wallet. So like if somebody wanted to bridge a token from mainnet over to Matic, that's very easy to do. And like we have a bridge actually built in our platform to do that. And if you send tokens to somebody's Ethereum wallet, they can also essentially like plug in and see those on their Polygon wallet as well. Like all that requires is changing your network and clicking a button in your MetaMask wallet or whatever wallet that you're using. So at least at the outset, it's much easier and more composable between the two of those. But longer term, we'll definitely build for other protocols as well. Like I wouldn't be surprised if later this year we'll be on Solana, as well as a number of like the L2s that are emerging. That's more of just like a bandwidth thing on our end, and like the ability to prioritize where we want to build next. But the idea is like, to be multi-chain and not necessarily hedge where we are just on one chain.
Yeah, makes sense. So Cody, I've spent actually a decent amount of time thinking if this applies to Lattice in some way, right? We have a really cool group of partners, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing I think that matters a lot, or at least I'm trying to be thoughtful about it, is like incentives really matter, and like getting that right at the front end. It's kind of a one-way door, right? If you get that wrong, it's if not actually impossible, maybe close to impossible to like revert back. So just share, like personally, I'd love to learn a little bit on what you see and like work well, right? Like I can very easily see, if we wanted to incentivize people to host a call and they get a little badge or NFT because of that it just like ripples across, and people host every single one of their Zoom calls as a Lattice call, and it just goes crazy. So anyway, talk to us a little bit about like the engagement and the incentives you've seen work well, and maybe counterexamples of what you've seen not work well too, if anything comes to mind.
Yeah, it's a great question and an area to explore, because it's iterating and evolving in real time. Like incentive design and mechanisms around tokens, there's really no, I'd say, best practices that have emerged to date, just by the nature of this being such an emergent field, where like even the most successful communities that are token based or token gated, like have existed at most for a handful of years. And many of like the social communities that have emerged over the past year or so are no older than 12 to 18 months. So they have been evolving their incentive mechanisms over time. I'd say like where we've seen communities succeed or build engagement is by introducing liquidity around their token at a later date, and using the token, at least in the outset within a community, to reward specific tasks as well as actions that are positive sum for that group. And that's where, like, if the token doesn't necessarily have liquidity at the outset, you have the opportunity to iterate on like what those reward mechanisms look like over time, right? So like maybe at the outset, you mint your token and you have 10 million tokens. Those tokens may be used as like, let's say if we use like Lattice as an example, where if you start to accumulate those tokens, you may get access to like maybe exclusive AMAs, or you may have more like autonomy around like content that you share, or your work gets amplified in some capacity. There's a number of different routes you can go. But those tokens like don't have any inherent value aside from what's ascribed to them by the community. And you can start to experiment with like giving out tokens for completing atomic tasks and seeing how that plays out in real time. Like to your point, if you start giving out, let's say 50 tokens, if folks decide to host a conversation or share content, and you see that starts to like be abused, or the activity around that is not what the community wants or like set out to do, you can change those actions. And like the accumulated tokens for folks that already did those actions, there's really no worth behind them aside from like what you ascribe to them. So you can more or less do a reset in some capacity and run a bunch of experiments before those tokens actually have like practical utility, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's it's like actual utility early on, right? Where again, access to certain things, but not financial utility in any way, right? Okay, interesting. All right, Michael, not to pick on you, but I feel like there might be something interesting with retain it. If not, obviously, like I have 1,000 other questions, but I want to pass the baton to you or anyone else if there are any questions that are top of mind here.
Yeah, like I said, I think there are some applications. One of the most pressing questions that comes to mind for me, Blas mentioned the importance of getting it right at an early stage. And I think in such a nascent space, one of the things that would concern me about using any sort of Web3 product at this stage would be if the switching costs were too high. How big are the switching costs from Coinvise to a potential competitor?
Yeah, so I think like one of the fascinating things about Coinvise, and I'd say many tools within Web3, is that there's no real platform lock-in. So we're essentially just serving as like an infrastructure layer to help folks launch and manage their tokens. But like if you mint a token on Coinvise, that token is sent to your wallet. Like the treasury of that token is fully owned by you. Coinvise doesn't retain any of those tokens or have any ownership of those tokens going forward. And then if you choose to use like airdrops or quests or vesting, like that is just like a single transaction where you're more or less like calling the Coinvise smart contract and saying like, Coinvise smart contract, can you help me send these tokens to X wallet? And for the period that airdrop is taking place, like we'll take those tokens and put them in escrow, but they can be like withdrawn if let's say you want to airdrop, you set up a claim page for 100 people to claim and only 50 people come to it. Like you can cancel that transaction and withdraw the remaining tokens. And then as soon as that airdrop campaign is over, like until you decide to use Coinvise again for another airdrop, where you're kind of like entirely autonomous and not locked into Coinvise in any capacity, if that makes sense. So it's really just serving as like the rails to help facilitate transactions. But beyond that, there's no lock-in. Where I'd say like there is the potential for more like robust engagement through our platform longer term is around kind of building your community's homepage on Coinvise. And that's where like we have a feed and a profile page for each community where like that can serve as kind of like your community's central page where folks can keep up to date with activity. And that might be like, if you have a new airdrop claim, that will show up in your feed, or if there's different active quests, that will show up in your feed. And folks can like use that as their point of entry to keep up with your community. But we're ultimately going to be building SDKs and APIs where all of that content can live on your own site as well. So you don't necessarily need to point people to your Coinbase profile unless that's what you want to leverage. So I'd say like that would be the only way where there might be some real lock-in long-term is like if you want to leverage more of the social functionality. But in terms of like the core utility of airdrops, quests, vesting, you're just plugging into Coinbase for those specific transactions. But beyond that, like you can leverage your token in any way you want.
Okay. My next question was going to be about SDKs and APIs. I jumped straight into the question I meant to say beforehand, but it sounds like an awesome product. I think it's really cool that it's very clear that you're thinking about so many stages of creator's journey.
Right.
The question that I forgot my question. Oh, I'm sure it will return to me in a moment.
Yeah. Cody, how do you guys make money? Is it a small transaction fee on everything?
Yep.
Yeah, just walk us through the business model.
So more or less like the Stripe model where we're taking a transaction fee. So minting a token on Coinbase is entirely free. Where we take a transaction fee are on like airdrops and quests, and ultimately on memberships as well. We'll take a transaction fee there as well. So on airdrops and quests, it's a 2.5% transaction fee. So like if you're sending, and right now our pricing is going to evolve over time, but right now it's based on like the number of wallets that you're doing an airdrop to. So like if you're doing an airdrop to 100 wallets on Matic, I think it's currently like a 0.5 Matic fee for each wallet that you're going to airdrop tokens to. And then like we'll have scaled pricing over time as well, where if you're doing like a significant amount of repeatable transactions, it'll obviously be significantly cheaper. But we're not. It's interesting because there's other folks who have taken the approach of monetizing or I guess generating revenue through taking ownership in tokens that are minted on their platform, almost in more of like a venture type model, where if like you mint a token on Coinbase, we're going to keep 10% of your treasury. We've stayed away from doing that. Like we want to give creators and communities like full autonomy and ownership over their token. And like maybe over time, we'll look to invest in communities that launch on Coinbase, but that will be entirely optional and will be kind of like in coordination with the creator, the community, as opposed to like just taking 10% of their treasury at the asset.
Yeah, no, really cool. And having some of that data from the back end to see which communities are growing and then say, look, we want to be helpful to you in XYZ way and create a partnership or whatever it might be. I'm not surprised if this has changed, but as I went down kind of this rabbit hole a few months ago, on creating the NFTs, not minting it, but just getting the designs for it, I just had to ask like 20 friends and they said, I work with this designer and this guy, like just go talk to them. But is there a marketplace today, or do you guys help with like the design and like the connection of like, hey, Bloss, you want to mint an NFT for Lattice? Here are some people you should talk to do that? Or is that sort of like totally outside of Coinbase's scope at this point?
I'd say that's a bit outside of our scope at this point in time. Like with membership NFTs and like how we're thinking about introducing NFTs, I'd say it's less about the art that's associated with those NFTs. And we're more focusing on the utility behind them. Like if you're doing tiered membership NFTs and using that as a crowdfunding mechanism, like, yes, you could have like really cool art associated with it, which might enhance the value. But like if you're doing, like, to my earlier point, like bronze, silver, and gold, like you could literally just have bronze, silver, and gold, like a card that represents that NFT. And it's more so the utility that those NFTs unlock is why people want to hold them relative to the artwork. I mean, like if you're an artist, maybe though, and like with your NFT, maybe you're using that to like crowdfund for studio time or for launching a new record. Having cool artwork associated with that like may improve the secondary value or like the collectability of that NFT as well. And that's where we would probably like look for ecosystem partners or like designers that we have in our network if someone needed like or wanted guidance around that. But in terms of like our solutions internally, it's less so on the design of the NFTs themselves.
Makes sense. If it's helpful to share your screen, feel free to do so. But I'd be curious, Cody, like, you mentioned on the Quest side, like creating an atomic unit that rewards someone. Would I go in there and type like, if a partner shares a piece of content or has a conversation, like how much have you actually abstracted out from the process? And like, if I were a customer of yours, like what would I input into Coinbase to get the result I want?
Yeah, I'll show you an example. Just let me pull up my screen real quick and then I can do a screen share here.
That'd be great.
And this will be a very basic example. But essentially, like, let's say, let's come in here. So this is like what the Coinbase dashboard looks like. You would come into the Quest module and say, I want to reward whoever completes this task with, you can use any token. So like if you want to pay someone in stable coins in USDC, you can do that as well. Or you can use your native token, really whatever's in your wallet. So like I'll use this demo token, for example, and we'll say this, like, if you go with my previous example, new logo, description would be like, create a new logo, Lattice, my spelling is off here, and then you can say like, there will be 10 people that are able to complete this quest. And for everyone who successfully completes this, we'll send them 100 tokens. And if there are any addresses or people that you want to like whitelist to be able to complete them, you can include this here as well. And then essentially you just sign the transaction at this point to create this quest. And then after that's created, you come over here, you'll see like in your dashboard, the different quests that you have live. And that quest will basically become a URL. And from that URL, this is what you can share with anyone in your community, like via Twitter. You could do it on Discord, wherever. And anyone who then clicks into that link will need to connect their wallet. They can see the parameters around like so the previous one, this would be logo design, create a new logo, the parameters around what you actually are looking for. And maybe that's like a Figma page or a Canva page, whatever it may be. You would apply. And this kind of like apply section is something that we're going to be continuously building out. But in the interim, like it would be putting a link. You could link directly to the Figma page or Canva page or a Google Doc, whatever it might be. You would post this in here and then submit that work. And then back on your end, Blast, you would get a notification saying that so-and-so applied to your quest. And by easily clicking in here, you would see whatever it is that they submitted. And you could say like, great, click accept. And then back on that page where that person previously clicked apply, that then turns into a claim page. And if their quest was approved, they can just click that and claim their tokens.
Very cool. And you mentioned before with the Nike example that there's some skin in the game. So could you set it up like anyone can apply, but those who apply, it costs them, half a Matic or something like that? Can you set up those types of parameters
Yeah,
too?
so we don't have that like currently built out yet.
Okay.
But that's like a direction that I'm excited about, like from a product standpoint of for those specific use cases where there needs to be skin in the game, where maybe like a staking mechanism, you can start to like build out a lot of interesting things there. But I'd say this, in terms of like what quests are today, this is still like an early iteration. And right now it's more so being utilized in like creating like marketing copy, or maybe sharing, proving that you shared image, like did a retweet, or you highlighted something on Instagram. And that's the use case around that has been primarily around creators. And like, it's an easy way for them to track engagement with their fans and like reward those, I guess, interactions with their content.
Yeah. Lex Friedman had a really interesting discussion with Michael Saylor a few weeks ago. And, he brought up a few potential use cases, like, if you DM someone, it costs you 20 cents or something, right? But it's not free. And the implications that can have for spam and bots is really interesting, right? Because you can spin up 10 million bots right now and it's free, essentially, right? But even if it's 20 cents, that like, I don't know, it could be enough friction to kind of help a lot of those problems that people are seeing. And I'm thinking a lot too about just, you mentioned the resumes and sort of building that expertise, where what's kind of hard right now is you have a curated community and you can ask them a specific question, which is great because like you built in a filter and that's really helpful. But the trade-off is it's limited in scope, right? And like the perfect person to help you might not be part of this curated community. So this idea of a little bit of like skin in the game or a small investment on your part to get a job or to answer a question or to join something is really, really interesting to me, right? Like if you care enough about this thing and you're willing to pay $2 to apply, you probably care enough, or whatever, it's $20 or $200, like whatever the bounty is. Anyway, that strikes a chord. It's really interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think like the idea of introducing some friction into the mix or a challenge in some sense filters out a lot of the garbage that might just like, there's no harm in applying, like you mentioned, to applying or sending someone a DM or a message today because it's entirely free. But if you did have to put a little bit of skin in the game and be more thoughtful, it would make it would lead to a lot more quality, I think.
Yeah, I've had to artificially do that for Lattice in a bunch of ways, right? The onboarding, a payment, you do that first thing. It's not like, so anyway, like if there's more touch points to do that, and again, even if it's $1 here and there, it'd be really interesting. For everyone who's on the call, we have 15 or so minutes left. If you have any questions, like please jump in. I can keep going, but Ethan or Jeannie or anyone, if you have anything, please feel free to jump in now. No,
to what extent would it be reasonable to say that Coinbase can be used as sort of DAO infrastructure as a service?
Definitely, yeah. I'd say like DAO infrastructure is probably the category that we've most neatly fit into.
Cool. So it's not a question that invites a particularly expensive answer, but it's helpful to know for explaining it to other people.
Yeah. So like, I think there's a few different use cases where there's maybe individual creators that are looking to build a community around them or tokenize themselves in some capacity. And that's kind of more along the lines of like a fan token. And you can totally do that on Coinbase. Like if a creator wanted to come on and mint 10 million tokens and use that as a way to reward participation in like their mini economy around them, they can do that. But most of the folks that are launching on Coinbase are doing it more from like a broader community perspective, or like from a DAO perspective, where they're looking to leverage their token as the internal mechanism for transactions within their community, and looking to facilitate like broader ownership of that token throughout their community. So like, yeah, that's where it's much more of like DAO infrastructure, where DAOs are looking to manage their tokens through Coinbase.
Cody, as I was thinking about the move to Mighty Networks, I looked at a whole bunch of different kind of like community in a box things,
Yep.
right? Circle was one of them, Mighty was one of them. And the reason I eventually ended up going with Mighty Networks is I think they do a really good job of documenting a lot of community best practices. So, if you want to do a daily poll, they just recently published like 1,000 questions that you can copy and paste. And like, now you can have a question a day forever. I'm not doing that, but like, I think they're really thoughtful about those sorts of things. And I know you're like quasi, if not fully, you wear a lot of hats, but like on the biz dev side. And I don't know if this is interesting, but one thing that came to mind is like, if you could partner with some sort of community in a box and make this even simpler for someone who's already started a community, right? So, hey, Bloss, you have Lattice. I don't know if you're interested in this, but look, you can run a mini experiment through Coinbase where if you want people to engage more, here are 3 steps you can do to sort of do that. So again, maybe it's like the blend of Web 2 and Web 3 is, not the growth area or the wedge that you want, but it could be kind of an interesting partnership model. And maybe Mighty's not the right one, but I think you get where I'm going with it.
Yeah, certainly. And like, I think an area that we're focused on and need to lean into further is kind of on that like educational piece and providing use cases and examples. So like we have currently what we call Coinbase Learn, which lives in our Notion. And that's a bunch of different articles and different demos and explanations of use cases. And like we've done kind of like different, I guess, case studies with communities and shared like how they've launched their tokens on Coinbase, how they've thought about different incentive mechanisms. But we want to build that into a much more robust platform and not have it live on Notion either. Like have a central nice page where all of that content lives. And it almost serves more as like an educational platform where if you're looking to launch a tokenized community and you don't know where to start, you go to Coinbase Learn and there's an entire like flow of this is where I am in my journey of learning how to launch my token. And here's the content that you need to bring you to the next step.
Yeah. And even like in these earliest stages, do some white glove onboarding, right? So plus like you don't even have a wallet. Okay, like here we go. Here's the first step. Let's get that funded. Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we're, at least a lot of what I do on the more business development side is like if we're working with folks that may be inexperienced with Web3 or looking to transition their community, like again, we're not charging anyone to mint their tokens or use Coinbase, but it's to our benefit to like help them with their token design process or thinking about the distribution. And like, I'll gladly jump on a call with someone for 30 minutes to help them brainstorm on how to use their token or how they're thinking about like the distribution amongst community members. And that is entirely just around like helping to bring more people into the space relative to like us charging an onboarding fee or something along those lines.
For sure. for sure. And that Stripe model makes all the sense, with that framing as well, right? Like if they grow, you grow, and everyone's better off for it. Cody, what, in this stage of your guys' life cycle, how can this community be helpful to you? We can put a recording like this on YouTube. We can use Lattice as a case study, right? Just like as a brainstorm. And again, like I think the thing that I struggle with is like finding those concrete examples and people to point to where it's like, oh, like I see how this similar-ish community issue tokens and I see what they're incentivizing and that resonates with me. So maybe that's a bad example, but like, what can we do to kind of like help and support you, whatever that might look like?
Firstly, very much appreciate that. And like, I think what's most helpful for us is just exposure to more folks that are building communities or are a part of communities where there's at least interest in experimenting with Web3 in some capacity, whether that's through NFTs and as an initial on-ramp or tokens, and then kind of facilitating like the opportunity to connect with them and share more about what Coinbase is doing. And then like from there, that's where I think it's helpful for us to plug in with different like case studies as well as examples of other communities that have built on Coinbase or are powered by Coinbase. So yeah, I think like just exposure to communities is the most helpful thing right now.
Amazing. Okay, let's have that as a takeaway and see if anyone comes to mind.
Cool.
But yeah, Cody, I know we're close to the hour, but thank you for making the time. I think what you guys are building is really interesting, and if you guys can reduce as much friction as it looks like you are, there's a lot to be had in that space.
Yeah, I think that's like the primary goal for us is to abstract away as much friction as possible and to make it as seamless as possible for anyone to facilitate transactions with tokens and make it feel like they're not even really using Web3.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Cool, man. Well, look, again, thank you. If there is ever anything else that comes to mind, just message me or people within Mighty Networks, and this will be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate you you letting me share more about Coinbase. It was fun chatting with everyone. And anytime anyone has questions or like wants to explore this stuff further, I'm always available. Love to chat about it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.